Welcome to Real Talk, Real Women, Breaking the Silence Around Abuse. I am Gemma Serenity Gorokov, your host, and today we have section number 2 of Lori Pappas. We have already talked in the last episode about the kind of abuse she overcame, the pivotal moment in her life. So we have already covered all of that, but just for context, especially if you haven't listened to the first episode yet, Lori, can you please give us an overview, contextualizing your experience, and we're going to dive into the third topic.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me back. I'm so excited to be here. So the abuse that I experienced is one that is not talked about much. And it's difficult because I grew up with the idea that if somebody was very religious, that's supposed to be a good thing. Well, my mother was a religious fanatic, and she lived in a make-believe world that everything was governed not by her choices, but everything she did was because she loved Jesus, and therefore this is the way she behaved. And one of her behaviors was very difficult in that, since I was a rebellious child, she thought I was possessed by the devil. And she would try to exorcise the devil from me. And by doing that, she really damaged the sanctity of my being. But I didn't realize that. You know, if a mother does not acknowledge a child as being a person and their progeny, that does damage someone's ability to feel like they have worth. So we talked about that in the first episode. My journey then was rather unusual in that from that experience and from the experience of my father then institutionalizing me, meaning I was put in a nut house when I was 16 years old, with the express purpose that I was supposed to learn how to deal with my mother. And instead of institutionalizing her, to change her behavior. And I was able to get out of that after several months. And I realized that I really didn't have any adults in my life that I could count on and trust. That whatever I was going to become was up to me, and I needed to take responsibility for that. And I did. And for that next 30 years, I worked in business and was really quite successful. In the meantime, I wasn't so successful in my personal life, but from a business perspective, yes, I grew a business, was able to sell it and retire when I was 49. And then I had to process, and then eventually I processed that trauma. And that set me up for the next part of my life and my second career that we're here to talk about today.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for this overview. So let's indeed talk about that third part. So how are you choosing to blaze your trail now? Meaning, how are you helping others on their journey? What is really your business about?
Well, right now, my business is about learning to be and encouraging women to embrace themselves and the wise woman that's within them. You know, my first path was all about doing and making money, making sales, being considered professionally successful. Now my goal really is to help women find their voice, discover their essence, make choices that are good for them, that are healthy choices for them. Because we've got so much potential. And, you know, quite frankly, we really have a leg up on the guys. We really do, because we're able to multi-process, we're multifaceted, we're able to juggle so many different balls, we're nurturing, for us to be empathetic and compassionate comes easier because of the way we're wired. But we just need to allow ourselves to embrace that side of ourselves and glory in it. And one thing I am going to just say, and as you get older, it becomes even more joyful. So we're poised to be able to do great things together as these glorious women.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for sharing. My question for you, your work in the South Omo Valley in Ethiopia is deeply inspiring. Thank you so much for having done that. The question is, what led you to focus on helping Indigenous communities, and how has this mission transformed your own healing journey?
Boy, I'll tell you, I was so lucky, just so lucky. Here, I had sold my business, and so we had some money to be able to do some expedition travel. And I was able to discover Africa. And by discovering Africa, I was actually able to, I think I visited 12 countries at that time. And in doing that with some wonderful lecturers, so I could sit there and I could look at what the difference it was in one country where the Brits had colonized versus the Dutch had colonized versus the Spanish or the Portuguese or the French. It was so wonderful because here on one hand, I was learning history and I was being able to make comparisons, and then I was able to observe people. And the more I was able to observe Indigenous people in their own environment, the more I fell in love with them. I believe it is because they had so little, they had so much connection with nature, with the animals, with the forces around them. And I remember listening to so many musical performances, and it really was just taking place with the stomping of the feet or the beating of the drums and their voices. That's what it was. And it was just, it just fills your soul. And so that's what pulled me into that whole Indigenous framework. And I thought I was going to work in Niger or in Mali, and but I ended up being pulled over into Ethiopia. And there I had the honor of meeting these very, very, we're not allowed to use the word primitive. It's people that really don't have their basic needs met in any way, shape, or form. And I found them to be the most awe-inspiring people I've ever met in my life. And I believe it's because that innate wisdom of the human experience was able to come through. When you don't have trappings, you're able to see the essence so much clearer. And when you can't speak the language and you're waiting for questions to be answered, and it has to go through several interpreters, you're forced to sit quietly and just observed. And I would watch these people, and I would discover good things and bad things. And a lot of times the bad things that I would see would be more on the interpreter's side, not asking the right questions or becoming impatient. And the good that I would see would be the thoughtfulness and the consideration and the collaboration that would come from the Indigenous people. And it fascinated me. And I was forced to not be in control because I didn't speak the language. So therefore, I couldn't be micromanaging anything. I had to just watch and feel and listen. And yeah, it's transformative for me. Absolutely transformative.
It's fabulous as an experience.
Yeah.
It really is. Wow. I can understand how that actually transformed your own healing journey. Because by having to sit down, having to keep silent because whatever you say doesn't reach the destination because they don't know your language either. Just for
Right.
context, because people are just listening to us, how do you look like in difference to Africa? Where were you born? What is your, I'm going to say mixed race because I don't know, so that people can imagine a little bit better.
Well, I'm a white woman with Western European ancestry. My mother was German, my father was Greek, and I'm first generation. My father was born in Greece and came over as a young child with his mother as an immigrant. So, but since I'm white and I look like everybody else, nobody thinks of me as a first generation.
Totally, totally. So you arrived there as a mature white woman, already probably with white hair, I don't know, maybe
Right.
yellow hair,
Yes.
I don't know, blonde meaning. And you arrive in a complete Black Africa, surrounded by only Black people in a language that does not meet yours. So not English, not German, not Greek, nothing that you
No,
knew of, nothing that you heard of, something different.
no.
And for them, it doesn't
And
mean anything what you say.
right. And also, when I decided I was going to work there, I did an interview. I really wanted to understand what they needed to have happen to have a chance for a healthy life. I wanted, I just think everybody needs a chance to have a healthy life. And so I did a survey and I would go around from one area to another. And I had picked an area that I wanted to work, and I just needed to figure out what kind of initiatives they needed and where would I most likely have success. Now, yes, I had a little bit of money, but I certainly didn't have enough money to build wells and build schools and do all that kind of thing. And I was going to have to raise money, which I had never done before. But I figured, well, I'd figure it out. And we did. You know, we were able to get big donors like USAID and the EU and a number of others. And we did big projects and they worked. And you asked me, how did I fit in? Well, first of all, they thought I dropped out of the sky. They thought that I was the gift from their ancestors. And it started because I I was able to identify what the big problem was right in the beginning, and that was that they had a lot of diarrhea and they were dehydrated. And so I bought medicine that was able to help them feel better right away. So going in and being able to provide immediate gratification to their health really helped me out. And they could tell that I really cared about them. And I did. I mean, my heart just went out to these people. And it didn't matter to me that they smelled or some of them weren't dressed, or the women wear goat skin tops and have mud in their hair, and there's all kinds of it's a very different culture, but none of that got in my way, because I was so focused on their personhood, and I think they could tell that. So it really became a loving relationship from both sides. Now, that's really unusual in that this is a very male-dominated society. But I think that when a competent, caring woman shows up, men are going to gravitate and listen to that woman, because there's always that maternal influence that men had experienced. So I had a lot of time to think. And that was key, that whole reflection and trying to understand the fact, well, here's a good example. My career was built on being competitive. I was a very good competitor and I was a very fierce competitor. As I looked at these people, it was obvious that their success was built on collaboration. And that's the fabric of their society. So when I would think about how can I introduce income generating activities so that they have access to more currency, how can this be done in a way that's collaborative and not competitive? And that's a whole different, that's a real shift in the mindset. Another thing I had to think through was, I was brought up being told polygamy was bad. Okay, that monogamy is really super important. And I was able to observe the society there, and it's very polygamous in that the elders marry a number of young women. Now, part of that is very good in that the woman is able to share the burden of the work, because their work is unbelievably strenuous, difficult, harmful, and all the rest. But it makes it very difficult because the young men then don't get a chance to marry. And then you have a lot of rape and other things that go on. So I was able to look at that subject, for example, and think about the different threads that go into, is something right or wrong, or is something gray, and how does that all work together? A big benefit I personally had was because I was no longer living in the United States. I wasn't being governed by American societal rules, because I wasn't African or Ethiopian or the tribes that I were working with. I wasn't part of their tribe. I wasn't governed by their societal controls. So therefore, I was able to look at the influence that society has on somebody's behavior much more objectively, because it's so much easier doing something from the outside than from the inside.
Fascinating. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's super, super valuable. I truly, truly enjoy your conversation. Thank you. My next question for you. In The Magic of Yes, the book you have just published today, or maybe yesterday.
Yes, yes.
In that book, you encourage women to embrace their inner wisdom. I mean, the wise woman within, WWW, and take control of their lives. So what practical steps do you suggest for women who are still struggling to say yes to themselves after years of abuse? You know it so much better than others. I mean, wow. Practical steps.
Well, I think there's three major paths that we need to follow to truly be able to embrace the wise woman within. One of them is open-mindedness, one is seeking knowledge, and one is reflecting. This isn't something that you do overnight, and it's not something that you become good at overnight. And it's not, I'm going to give you for myself, it's easy for me to reflect, because I have found it so helpful, and it's a wonderful mind space for me to be in. I find it easy for me to seek knowledge because I'm curious and I like to learn. What's the hardest thing for me to do is to be open-minded. And when I realized this, I was very, very surprised, because I've always thought of myself as being open-minded. I travel a lot. I talk to different people. I like to read, all of that. But you know, those damn supposed tos and early programming and all of that gets in your way. So it's something I still work on. So the advice that I would give to people that are starting out on this journey is, first of all, good for you for making the choice. You know, just congratulate yourself that you have the intention to do this. And that's a big first step. And then the next step, I would say, is be nice to yourself. I mean, just give yourself some space. You know, I have a dear neighbor woman that really wants to be able to embrace her wise woman within. And the assignment she's had for the last year is to find 5 minutes a day to sit and reflect. And she still hasn't been able to do it, but she's been thinking about it, and she's inching up on it a little bit. And I just keep saying, that's great. Just give yourself time. This changing behavior is not an overnight thing. It's a difficult thing. Everything is one little step. And give yourself permission to make mistakes. In fact, when you make a mistake, glory in it, because it gives you a chance to learn. And just think about it. And it all starts with intention. It all starts with small steps. And like I said, to me, there's the three paths. It's the open-mindedness, the reflection, and the seeking knowledge. And one is going to come easier than the other. And treat yourself and let yourself do that a little bit more. But you know, don't give up on the hard stuff.
Thank you so much. I think it's extremely valuable. My third question, your book discusses forgiveness, which is absolutely foundational and paramount. It transcends everything in life. Both, of course, forgiveness both of ourselves and of others. So for those who are like, what? Forgiving this abuser? Forget it. I can never forget that. I can never forgive that. I will always think of that. Basically, like speaking misery onto themselves, thinking that they are actually speaking misery onto the abuser. What would you suggest in order to get them to move up one step?
I had a stepdaughter that gave me a simple little phrase that I found really, really helpful and really worked for me. And that was that, would you drink poison and expect the person standing next to you to die? I mean, to me, that really says it all, is that if you want the person that abused you to drop dead, poisoning yourself is just not going to get the job done. And when you carry that anger and that resentment and that fury, that's taking up your energy, and you're drinking poison. So I would say that if you want to thrive, stop drinking it. You know, just, you have to stop drinking it. And the other thing I would say is, and don't you feel lighter when you're walking without a load on your back or carrying heavy bags or having shackles around your feet? You can just move easier. And to me, there's a lot I want to do and a lot I want to experience. And I don't want to be chained and held back. And when you're carrying that emotional baggage, those are shackles around you. They really are. They're not hurting the abuser. What you're doing to yourself doesn't hurt them. In fact, who knows, it might even be making them feel good. I don't know. I don't need to go down that path. But the bottom line is if you want a healthy life, give yourself a chance and don't carry an extra load and stop drinking the poison.
It's an excellent and extraordinary response. Thank you so, so much. I truly appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
So we have your book published just yesterday, The Magic of Yes. And I'm so happy and grateful to have been able to have it in my hands beforehand, to read it beforehand, to interview you beforehand so that we can
it's so great.
That book is absolutely amazing because it is, of course, it is sharing some of your story, of your traumatic experience as a kid growing up, because that is the foundation, that is the pressure of the earth to make you the diamond you have become. So that is essentially, it's part of it. And it is triggering in some way, but that's all right. Because what comes out of it and the experience and the wisdom and the teachings that you bring through with this book is foundational. It's essential. It matters, and it truly transforms the people reading that. Sure, you focus on women, but honestly, it's for everybody, because we all have a feminine and a masculine energy within us. So whatever gender we are, we actually channel the feminine, the divine feminine in us. If we are a man, we actually become more balanced. If we are a woman, we become more balanced too. So really tapping into this wise woman within, it's an energy, it's a power, it's a spiritual awareness that becomes a mindset. So I'm truly, truly honored to present you that book and to share with you that you can have it everywhere books are sold, for sure. The Magic of Yes, Embrace the Wise Woman Within by Lori Pappas, Pappas. You got it.
Right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so, so much for being here, Lori.